Hi, friends. It's Natalie here. Ever feel completely overwhelmed by the holiday clutter? Today's episode is such a gem. I'm talking to one of my favorite guests, decluttering expert Katy Wells. We're going to talk about how to stay mindful during the holiday season. We dive into the stress that comes with the holiday stuff. We share practical tips to keep it simple. Also, Katy has some wonderful advice on creating lasting memories without the clutter, and how we can teach our kids that the holidays are about so much more than just the gifts. We even touch on the emotional side of letting go of stuff and how we can be more mindful and intentional. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and head on over to natalietysdal.com, where you'll find my weekly newsletter where you can sign up. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on some of this great content and extra goodies that I have there. All right, it's holiday time, and I want to help you out and make it easier. Let's get into today's interview. Katy, this is the time of year where we need to be very mindful of stuff because it can be overwhelming, especially right after the holidays when you're trying to put everything away and organize it. So let's get right into Christmas, the holidays, and staying mindful of being minimalist.
I think there is this interesting feeling that comes up for a lot of us this time of year, especially if you've tried to declutter, if you have been decluttering and organizing and wanting to simplify your life, how, the sad and unfortunate reality is sometimes with traditional holiday traditions, or how a lot of us were raised, is it comes with this massive influx of stuff. And some of this is really great things. We can't knock it all, like, gifts. Some of them we want, some of them we don't. Toys, if we have younger kids, holiday decor, and all of these things can really make our homes feel stressed. The reality is, and I know I've shared this with you before, but it's a good reminder for all of us, is there's a particular study done many years ago. And what they found is there is a direct correlation between the amount of stuff in your home and your stress levels. And so again, even though these are good things, a lot of them, the Christmas tree, the stockings, the decor, the stuff we do want, some of us moms, women, people can get really overwhelmed and like more triggered and lose our patience, even though we're trying to embrace the goodness. So I think keeping that in mind, and for me, it's really about finding a balance for your season of life, what you're willing to dedicate, doing and preserving from your traditions, and making that feel like more of a harmonious balance. So I think a great place to start as we're heading into the holiday season could just be, do the holidays always have to look like this? And one question I always ask myself every single year is, at this time last year, was I stressed out about anything in particular that I have, that's in my control to change this year? Is a tradition too overwhelming? Is travel too overwhelming right now? Maybe instead of baking cookies from scratch, I go buy dough and then just still have the decorating the cookies with the kids, but it's simpler for me. Maybe it's less decorations. Maybe it's less spending. Maybe instead of buying 15 gifts per child, it's 8 or 6. So I think having those regular reflection points and evaluations can really guide you in the direction that could be a good starting point for simplifying the holidays and reducing the stress. And again, we want to enjoy like the ooey gooey feelings of the holiday season, and stuff and clutter are a really big distraction from that.
Well, and we want to be sure that we are teaching our kids that the holidays aren't necessarily about stuff. Stuff is fun. Gifts are fun. But if we're giving all of that and we're making it about that, then they're going to learn those same things. So creating the traditions, I have to admit, like I was out at the store and haven't put up lights or anything yet. I'm itching to. But I saw things that we have just moved last year. So we decluttered a lot. A lot of the stuff that I had put out every year, I don't have anymore. But I was at the store and I started seeing like placemats and candles and these things that I kind of just got rid of. And I had this moment of, oh, that would be, nope, I'm not going to do it. Like I have to remind myself it's not about the stuff. And I just got rid of stuff. And so how do you advise people in getting through that mental just habit, really?
Yeah, a lot of us buy just mindlessly, right? Or we're think about the exposure of advertisements we see. I might hop on Instagram to post something about decluttering, and then I immediately see an influencer promoting a really cute purse. I'm like, ooh, I like that. And then I see an ad for a necklace. I'm like, that's really cute. It's like
How do you stop
like,
yourself? How do you stop? Because you don't even realize you're doing it.
This question is complex, it's nuanced, but I think one great kind of 30,000 foot view perspective on this is to understand that identity drives behavior. Our identities, and we have multiple identities, right? Mother, entrepreneur, whatever, right? You name it, whatever your identities are, these drive what we buy, what we think we should buy, the way we want to be perceived by other people. I mean, everything. And so from a consumption standpoint, that's a big factor. And a lot of it is like, it's subconscious, right? It's not things that necessarily live on the surface that we're aware of. But when I started to declutter and realized I needed to pull the weed out by the root instead of chopping it at surface level, because I was a massive, like every day I bought something, every single day online. I was like, buy. I was triggered emotionally by stress and anxiety. And I still get stressed and anxious sometimes, right? But over the years, tapping into my identity as a simplifier has really helped curb some of that, right? Again, I still have to practice really like practical things, whether that's, hey, if I see an ad, I can just like a mantra I kind of have in place is, that purse is beautiful, it's cute, I'm going to appreciate it from a distance. I don't need that because guess what? I already have 2 or 3 purses I love. So because, with social media and advertising specifically, they know what they are doing. They study human psychology. They know that they want us to compare ourselves. And as the quote says, comparison is the thief of joy. I tell my kids this all the time now, who are 8 and 9.
I need to be saying that too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I remind myself of that and fear of missing out, right? That scarcity, like, oh, it's only on sale now heading into the holidays when everything's on sale, but really
that's
nothing
a dangerous one.
It's so tantalizing. And it's like, we all love a deal. You can't take that out of people. And so it's kind of having your identity and your North Star. Like when we have our North Star, or, a great way to put this is like, what's your big why for wanting to simplify? That can be like your grounding piece in those moments when your prefrontal cortex is hijacked, right? That's your like command center where it's like logic, planning, prioritizing. I'm a simplifier. I don't buy stuff. I just decluttered that. But then it's like, ooh, I want that. Ooh, I want to feel a certain way. Because when we buy things, we're buying beliefs, emotions, stories, aspirational identities. Like it can go pretty deep. Sometimes, yes, it is just cute. But, dialing it back and going, so identity and big why can be really big grounding techniques.
Let's talk about gifting and simplifying the gifting. So I have kids a little bit older than you. You're really in that young stage, the fun stage, the Santa stage, but let's talk about different levels of gifting. For me, it's kids who don't live here. One wants stuff and likes to have more stuff. And the other's like, I don't want stuff, Mom. I don't. But can you give us at different stages of life ideas for gifting and simplifying the holidays?
So I want to share 5 different categories that I love for clutter-free gifts. So the first one, and this is a personal favorite, and again, you have to play in and customize these to the personality that you're gifting to. And you also, while I'm talking through these, Natalie, think about like if they inspire you to create your own wish list. You're simplifying still. So my favorite as a mom in my season of life is time-saving gifts. So these are gifts that really lighten your load by cutting down on regular tasks, everyday tasks, and you get more time back. I want more time. That's my love language. So perhaps it's a gift card or a short-term subscription for like a meal delivery service. Especially your girls are off, right? They're young. I didn't like to cook when I was young. I still don't. So it hits that bucket too. That would be helpful for them. House cleaning services. I mean, I would love that. Babysitting, pet care, things like that. Anything, again, that's going to lighten their load. Experience gifts is one that probably gets the most, it's like the biggest buzzword, I think, as far as a clutter-free item. But I think people really love these, and me too, because it helps create those lasting memories through experiences. So again, these are promoting connection, quality time, concert or event tickets. I mean, you don't have to get like your daughter a Taylor Swift ticket. I'm sure she'd appreciate that and love that if she's a Swiftie. but it could be something more simple and, local to your area. Classes or workshops, local or online, can be really great. Travel adventures, things like that. And if you're not taking the adventure together or taking it soon, you could create a little homemade voucher that's in a card that they open. So don't think that because some of these things aren't necessarily physical or, come wrapped in a box, that it's not meaningful to the person. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who are worried to talk to family members where it's like we're stuck in this gifting mentality. And it's like, I buy you something, you buy me something. And it's just rote and kind of automatic. But finances this time of year, it's so much pressure. And so I find that when my students are able to just broach the conversation with their families and say, what if we did gifting a little bit different this year? What if we all did one family gift? And, we had this experience together. We went to a concert or went into town and saw the lights together and just simplified gifting. And every single time my student comes back to me and goes, it was so well received. And the family members go, oh my God, I'm so glad. I've been so overwhelmed and stressed about this. I'm so glad you brought this up. Thank you. We worry, am I failing my family for not keeping up with the tradition? Or maybe I should do this just because we've always done it. But you'd be surprised. So those are two. Digital gifts are also a great one. Consumable gifts would be anything that would be consumed over time. Those are great. Bath bombs, gourmet treats. I mean, I love charcuterie stuff. I'm here for it. So anyone that gives me cheese, I'm like a dog. If you give me cheese once, I'm like your best. I'm like, oh, she gave me cheese. I love her. And then you've got your DIY homemade stuff, which would be for more the people who are into that. Certainly not me, but it can feel meaningful. And if you have the time and energy to do that, it really does. That thought is what goes a long way. So those are 5 different categories we can kind of get creative with and customize to the receiver.
When it comes to approaching this as a family, let's start with your immediate family, and you've got kids and you want to change things. You're like, I want to be about more than just the pile of gifts that the kids walk down to. How do you, as a family, say, this is what we're going to do this year to make it meaningful and without feeling like you're disappointing them?
Right. You don't want to feel like it's restrictive and we're losing the magic and all these things. For me, it's not just one conversation. It's the initial conversation, whether that's with your partner and your kids or your extended family. But, we need to address the elephant in the room, right? And for some of us, it's the expense of the holidays. Some of us, it's just the chaos from the clutter and, the added pressure and all of that. And just being vulnerable, really, and saying, listen, I've noticed that, some of the best parts of the holiday season, I'm not even able to enjoy because I'm so overwhelmed with all the clutter and mess after. And I'm the one that's responsible for that in this home. So what are some ways that we can simplify the holidays where me, mom, can enjoy it a little bit more? And also, consider how it's impacting other people. Maybe your partner doesn't feel or see the clutter and doesn't have that negative impact as much as you, but maybe your partner really is paying the credit card bill and that stresses them out. So bringing in these different pieces that are relatable and resonate with your family can help them understand context to why you want to simplify versus being like, wait, I'm not getting as much stuff as I normally do. What? Hold the brakes, And so that's a great place to start. And, then you also need to bring in the reason for the season, And so we all tend to get wrapped up in the consumer aspect of the holiday season. That's how it's fed to us. And we need to keep those conversations going. It doesn't stop after the holidays, and it can come up in natural conversations. But like I said, comparison is the thief of joy was one example. I tell my kids that all the time. And I know I will tell them that Christmas Day when they find out their best friend gets a Nintendo Switch and they didn't, It's a lifelong thing we need to help instill and encourage and model. But we have to start with just being honest and see where that takes us.
Yeah. Yeah. When it comes to our kids giving us gifts, I found that they feel like we have to reciprocate and have to come up with something, and I don't need stuff. One year I told my kids, and I want your take on this, I don't want anything you didn't make for me. Because, now I have a lot of made picture frames and little photos, but other ideas maybe in that regard.
I think whether it's, whether it's saying, hey, I would really prefer a handwritten card versus a card you pick up at Walmart, or it's saying something like, hey, this year for the holidays, will you only buy me what's on my wish list, versus buying, giving me stuff that ultimately becomes clutter. No matter kind of what the conversation is, the thread and the theme is the same. And I think it's really like, it's bringing in some boundaries into the situation. And I think one of the best ways to invite that and make it fruitful and less awkward or less challenging is to invite the other person into it with you. And perhaps that conversation could look like similar to what we just talked about. Hey, you know what? One of my favorite memories when I was a kid was making holiday cards for my dad. That was one of his favorite things. And, this year it would mean a lot if that's something you did for me. Is that something you have the time and energy and are willing to do? And if not, how could we shift gift giving or, card giving in our family? Because that is really what means the most to me. And then start there. And when we can invite them into the process versus being like, this is what I want or don't get it. Because, right, we have our different love language. Like some people really love to go to Walmart, maybe pick up a card. So maybe they do both, right? And it fulfills kind of both of those types of personalities. But again, I just can't stress I think the value of inviting them in to, problem solve with you, if you want to call it that.
And maybe it's a family meeting before gift giving and buying starts of how we're going to do this year. Let's talk about preserving the memories. So we've just, because we moved and gone through big purges recently, we've done the digital. We've kind of taken boxes and gone digital. How do you advise people? And I still have boxes of stuff I can't, even after I digitize it, I feel like I can't get rid of it. Got boxes of tapes, they're digital. I'm like, and same thing with photos. There's some kind of, I don't know if it's guilt over throwing away these memories.
I would say a powerful reframe I would offer you, Natalie, and the listeners today is specifically for digital clutter, but this applies to all, is focus on curating and not collecting, or in other words, in this case, you could say preserving. Right? I think of art curators. Curating art is an intricate process. It involves selecting, organizing, like presenting like the best of the best, right? In a way that conveys a meaningful message for the person who's walking into that art gallery. And when they're displayed together and it's like you see the pictures and you're like, oh, you see the story, you feel the feelings, all the things. There's a big difference between curating, walking into a museum that's been curated versus just them slapping a bunch of artwork that they like on the walls, right? And collecting is acquiring. And so it sounds like that's still, like, even though you digitize some of it, you still have a lot of it. It's still collected in a sense. And so that's probably why you still feel like you haven't made progress, because it's still there. Nothing, like the volume hasn't changed, even though you have been able to get rid of some of the physical stuff that's been digitized. So you have to focus on the ones that tell the best story. If this really changed everything for me from a sentimental perspective too. If everything is special, then nothing really is. So think of like your best of the best playlist. Like I love the Beatles, I love Led Zeppelin, but there is something so special about popping in, at least when I was used CDs when I was in high school, I'd put in the best of playlist, right? That is a curation versus having 18 CDs and listening to one or two songs off of each of them, right? And you can, yes, and you can simplify and still honor the memories. I want to share a study because this is one big thing that you're keying into here. There is something psychologically that happens through the declutter process, whether it's digital or whatever, that kicks up a roadblock for us. It feels overwhelming, and typically it's something that comes up from something called loss aversion. And that's the fear of losing a memory tied to an object. So if I digitize this thing, or if I get rid of these albums, or if I get rid of the digital clutter that now I've created for myself, do I lose the object, or do I lose the memory forever? And a study done, I think it was maybe a college in Pennsylvania, had people take photos holding their sentimental objects, which I know sounds silly, but they were holding a photo sometimes of family or whomever. And they were able to let go with confidence those photos because they knew they had a photo of themselves with it. So it completely reduced that loss aversion fear that every one of us experiences. That's part of our humanity, right? And not only did they let go with confidence, there was no regret. And oftentimes they never looked back at that photo. It was just knowing that it was there if they needed it.
So things, are you saying like the childhood teddy bear, like can't get rid of it, but if I take a picture with it, now I can get rid of it? Wow. Yeah, my husband uses that a lot, where he'll say, can you get rid of this? I'll go, I'm not sure. He goes, let's take a picture with it. And then now I can get rid of it. So it's funny. He just in this moving process, he's like, I took a picture of it. I'm good. He's good. He's like, he's at the stage of like, getting rid of stuff is so rewarding.
It feels good. Yeah.
I've gotten better for sure. But I think it's the childhood things and even my kids' stuff, like getting rid of my children's, their favorite little outfits from when they were babies. And they're in their 20s now. And I'm like, but maybe their kids, my husband's like, they're not going to put that on their kid.
I think it's funny, when I have a little small keepsake bin for each of the boys where paperwork and artwork, like the best of, I'm curating it, inside this keepsake box that when they're 18 or whenever they move out, who knows, I will hopefully pass on to them. Right. A lot of us think on the surface level, like, oh, I'm doing this for them. I'm creating these, saving these memories for them. But really, it's for us if we dig a little bit deeper. Like it holds a special time in our lives, like when they were babies or all these different things. And it's human. But it can get tricky if we expect them to care just like in the same way we care, So,
and it's pushing that on them. Like when they move, I think I remember that when I moved out and my mom said, here's your box or boxes. And I'm like, oh, I don't really need those. And she's like, well, we're downsizing. We don't need it. So you're almost pushing that on your kids if you give them very much because they don't necessarily want to move with all that stuff.
Yes. And it's not necessarily transferring the memories because they might not have a memory or care about the stuff. It's transferring the responsibility. And I've had a lot of students over the years where their mother-in-law or whomever, maybe it's their mom or dad, will just dump boxes of stuff in their house from their childhood and go, I don't want this. This is for you. But they expect them to hang on to it because they're sentimentally attached, but they don't want to keep it in their house. And I had a student who had a mother-in-law say, next time I come over, I'm going to make sure you haven't gotten rid of any of this. So would you believe the amount of pressure? And, as someone who works so hard to simplify her home, every time her mother-in-law came over, she brought something. So there was definitely ongoing conversations, boundary setting that needed to come into that. But we can't expect our kids or anyone. I mean, I'm sure you've related to this, Natalie. You and your husband can look at the exact same item and he'll be like, chuck it, clutter. And you're like, but wait, because we all have a different value lens. So being able to honor that, respect it, give everyone grace and permission. And like, here's the thing. It's okay to be sentimental. It's okay to, give yourself permission to feel the feels. And I think especially with sentimental things or your kids, babies' items, I tend to want to take the easiest way out. And one of the easiest ways to make progress through sentimental things is to let time do the heavy lifting for you. So I have one sentimental box and I revisit it once a year to let the things do what they're supposed to do, spark the memory, remind me of something, make me feel a certain way, which is why we keep them anyway, right? So we can experience that. And I let go of 4 or 5 things out of that box once a year. And it's no pressure. Of course, that's through a lot of, internal work over the years. I didn't always have one box. But if you have the resources and capacity to have a little extra time to go through those, it can do a lot of time, right? Just time passing can do a lot more of the heavy lifting.
Yeah. And maybe do the picture with it and I go, okay, now I'm good. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I really think that's great advice. It gives you just that feeling of, and then maybe we talk another time about decluttering digitally, because all of a sudden now you've got all these pictures, and I look back and I know for a lot of people it's like, you've got 10,000 pictures. How do I organize those? And do I preserve them? And so let's save that. Let's do digital decluttering another time. We always come up with more topics, don't we?
I love it.
Because they're endless and they're so important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, happy holidays to you all. I know you've gone through a lot with the flooding, and I know that probably makes you rethink. By the way, for those that don't know, Katy's was in kind of the flood zone. And that probably makes you rethink a lot of stuff too, doesn't it?
I think for me, it's reinforced the philosophy of like, our humanity when it comes to stuff, which I've always believed in. And I think a lot of experts in my field really dismiss, and I think it creates a lot of shame and guilt for people. But in my town, seeing people lose their homes, it's heartbreaking, and lose their stuff, and not on their terms, like through decluttering or this intentional process. It just reinforces, why I do what I do and why I teach what I teach. So yeah thank you for your kind words.
Yeah, I know you're staying with your family out in Iowa, and I'm getting ready to go back. So the best to you and all of that process, and your friends and neighbors in there too.
Thank you.
Yeah. And happy holidays to you.
Happy
Thanks
holidays.
Again for your time.
Thanks.